It was a beautiful morning in the year of 2011 on the island of Sodor. Most of the engines were overhauled, rebuilt, or sent away to heritage railways. The railways of Sodor have expanded and changed too. Most of the sheds were upgraded to have more berths, so that engines had more places to sleep. And more branch lines and railways were built, or being built so that extra engines could work on them as well. The island of Sodor had never been so different and amazing to the engines before. One day, in the new and improved Tidmouth sheds, the engines Thomas, Edward, Henry, Gordon, James, Percy, Toby, Duck, Donald, Douglas, and Oliver were in the sheds. Emily was also supposed to be in the sheds, but the engines haven't seen her since the other day.
Gee, wonder where Emily is.
Yeah, come to think of it, I haven't seen her since yesterday.
Just then, the Fat Controller arrived.
Good day, engines. I bet you're all wondering where Emily is.
Yes, sir. That's what we were about to discuss.
Emily is having an overhaul for the time being. If my calculations are correct, she should be back with us by the start of the summer holidays.
That's a relief.
But with the rest of the engines busy, I would like you, Henry, to do our jobs.
But what about my work in the forest?
Gordon will do them.
Gordon was surprised.
But sir, what about my express duties?
James and Murdoch will pull the express until Emily comes back.
Me and Murdoch?
You will be pulling it when Murdoch is pulling goods trains, and when Murdoch will be pulling the express when you are called to do goods work. In the meantime, Gordon, I think it's best if you leave.
Why can't Edward do the job? He's
really useful. Engines don't argue with their controllers.
So Gordon didn't. He left the sheds, grumbling dreadfully.
The indignity. The shame of it. The shame of it.
Gordon came back from forest work when the sun had just started to set.
Forest work. Forest work. The shame of it. The shame of it.
Don't be so miserable, Gordon. You're lucky you're alive.
Why?
Because I heard that a paranormal engine roams there.
Is this another one of your ghost stories, Edward?
Nope, but it tells of something worse than a ghost.
What is it?
You have all heard several ghost stories before.
Yeah, and they were proven wrong.
Said the engine who was spooked by an old station on a foggy night.
Ah, zip it, Percy.
Anyway, yes, you have all heard those stories before, but have you ever heard of the Slender engine?
What's the Slender engine?
The Slender engine is an engine who roams around forests at night. They say whenever the moon is full and when the animals are asleep, the Slender engine, a black steam engine with no face, looks for steam engines to destroy. And those who try to find the Slender engine are never seen again. Most of the engines were startled, but it was Thomas and Percy who were more scared.
Oh my, that sounds scary.
I don't want to be in face to no face.
But Gordon just scoffed.
Pah! You two are just small little scaredy engines. I'm a big engine, and big engines aren't afraid of anything.
Remember when we first saw Diesel 10 way and the Fat Controller left for his holiday and left Mr. Conductor in charge?
I was in shock, Thomas. And before you mentioned me shuddering, that was when fumes from Diesel 10 reacted to my engine.
Right.
Thomas was annoyed when Gordon called him and Percy scaredy engines, but he managed to hide his annoyance well. As he and the engine slept, he thought of how to pay Gordon out. The next day, Thomas was at a water tower and was taking on water. His driver and fireman went to get some lemonade. While they did this, Thomas decided to take a nap. What he didn't know was that two boys with red hair saw Thomas with interest.
Look, Gary, it's an engine. Yes, Albert, I know. I see it. What do we do with it? I say we have a little bit of fun with him. Shall we? Okay.
The two boys jumped into Thomas's cab, Fortunately for them, Thomas didn't wake up. The boys had brought some rocks in their pockets and used them to jam Thomas's controls, but not before opening the regulator first. The boys had just jammed the rock onto the regulator when the driver and fireman just came back and saw to their shock and horror what the two kids were doing. "Hey, what do you two think you're doing?" The driver's shout had not only made the boys make a run for it, just as Thomas started moving, but it also woke Thomas up.
What the?
Thomas moved slowly at first, and then he began to pick up his pace a little. The driver turned to the fireman, who was still drinking lemonade in a cup. "Come on, Emmett, we must stop Thomas from causing an accident."
But I want to finish my copa!
"You can do that later. Right now we've got an engine to stop." The fireman sadly dropped his cup, and he and the driver ran off after Thomas. Fortunately, they managed to jump into Thomas's cab before he could go any faster. Unfortunately, they couldn't stop Thomas as rocks jammed the controls.
Help! I can't stop!
Thomas passed Diesel, who was pulling a goods train.
Watch where you're going, you steam hog!
Thomas zoomed past farms and raced in the tunnels until he eventually came to Henry's forest. His driver and fireman were almost done removing the rocks of the controls at the time, but little did they know was that trouble was near. Before Henry was called to do Emily's work, he was to pull a train of black and white paint for the new logging station in the forest. But one of the cars containing paint broke from Henry's train and went to his siding. And now Thomas was heading straight towards it. The signalman in Henry's forest was new and forgot that the truck was on the siding, so when he saw Thomas, he diverted him onto the siding the truck was on. Luckily, the driver had managed to get all the rocks out of Thomas's controls, but he was too late to brake in time. Thomas shut his eyes. No one was hurt, but Thomas felt woozy. His driver and fireman inspected him. They eventually brought their news to him.
Fortunately, we don't detect any damage, but you're covered in black paint and your face is all white.
You look exactly like the Slender engine.
Oh, bother! I'm ruined! Now everyone will run away from me and be scared of me!
Suddenly, an idea flew into Thomas's funnel.
Wait!
He remembered Gordon calling him and Percy scaredy engines, and since yesterday, Thomas thought about how to pay him out. Now, his plan was made.
Excuse me, driver.
Yes, Thomas? Thomas told his driver and fireman about the plan.
Can we please do it? This will teach Gordon a lesson for calling Percy and I a scaredy engine.
The driver and fireman agreed. They too have been spooked about the story of the Slender engine when they were children, and Gordon's driver and fireman have been teasing about it ever since. Alright, Thomas, but just this once, okay? When this is over, we'll wash this black and white paint off before it dries off. Speaking of Gordon, he was at the logging station. All of his cars were already loaded with logs, and the workmen got in the brake van. But Gordon's driver was having trouble with the regulator.
Hurry up, driver! I can't wait to get out of this forest!
But before the driver could respond, a shrill creaking sound sounded out.
What's that? Show yourself!
What the devil is going on here?
I don't know, but I don't like the look of this.
The driver finally managed to snap open the regulator, and Gordon ran off, screaming into the night, his trucks following behind. As soon as Gordon was out of sight, Thomas let out all of his contained laughter. When at last there was silence, his driver spoke up. "Okay, Thomas, it's time to get that paint off of you." Thomas didn't argue with that. He puffed away to the washdown. Meanwhile, after delivering his logs, Gordon puffed into Tidmouth sheds, his face as white as Stanley, and he was shaking all over.
Hey Gordon, why so shaky? What's got into you?
I saw the Slender engine. I was scared of him. He almost got me.
Just then, Thomas, his black and white paint completely washed off, puffed into the sheds. He had heard everything.
The Slender engine? I thought that you said big engines weren't afraid of anything.
Gordon pretended he hadn't heard him.
I doubt that you saw the Slender engine. Your eyes must have been playing tricks on you.
But we all know what really happened, don't we?